I'm Lin Chamberlain, and I am definitely an alcoholic. You're worried about whose profanity? Greg? Oh, baby, I taught him everything he knows. Hi, I'm Lin Chamberlain. I'm an alcoholic. By the grace of God working through you people, I have not had to pick up a drink since my first meeting on May 20th of 1985, and for that I'm truly, truly grateful. And it is an absolute miracle. I went in the bathroom because, I'm old and I have to run to the bathroom wherever I light. And I didn't get down on my knees because I can't get back up. But I asked God to let the words be thine and the voice be mine, which I was taught to do. And now I'm supposed to get behind the podium and enjoy myself. And I want you to know I really do, because I love to talk and I'm a storyteller. And I have been vitally involved in Alcoholics Anonymous for almost every day of the 39 years and some change that I've been sober. And it has given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. I could not imagine what would happen when I got here. So I'm going to do it it'll be kind of like a newcomers meeting. How did a nice girl like you end up in a place like this? Yeah, well, it wasn't easy. I was born in Wichita Falls, Texas, moved here at 18 months old. I've lived in Houston or close to it the rest of my life. I was married 16 years before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous to 3 different husbands. There were some things that happened, okay? My first husband, the Baptist Sunday school teacher, I married to straighten me out. And he did. We had a beautiful life. And I was pregnant with our second child, my little baby boy over there, when he drowned up in Huntsville on a camping trip. And my daughter was 13 months old and I was 22 years old. And I was in one of those places that alcoholics usually understand, where I couldn't move forward, I couldn't move backward, and I could not stand to breathe where I was. But a fifth of whatever would keep me from giving one damn whether that man was dead or not. It was just okay for that night. I could even give you reasons why he wasn't all that perfect anyway. So, we got through that. Carl was born with some problems. We managed to keep him alive, and he survived. And I replaced him about a year and a half later with a fine, upstanding young man I met on the Trinity Valley Trail Ride. Girls, it's not the best place to go husband shopping, okay? I want you to know. But it works, and we just had a wonderful 8-month courtship. We were together, we were broke up, we were together, we were broke up, we were together, we were broke up, we got married in my mother's living room. And they were so glad, because they just knew that if I was married, I'd be safe and I'd be okay. I married a drunk, Mom, and it didn't go real well. I mean, we went to live happily ever after, and our definitions were different. Happily ever after for Jesse was he got off work and he went to the den in Galena Park, where he'd been going since he was 16, and he drank till he was tired or hungry or whatever, and he came home bringing friends, maybe midnight, maybe 2 in the morning, and I was supposed to have dinner ready when they walked in the door. I wasn't real good about that. And little arguments would ensue. One night I went to bed because they were just yelling, and they opened a bottle of champagne and broke the chandeliers above the table, and the glass fell in the food, and they ate it anyway. And I just went to bed, We moved to outside of Alvin, and we bought a place with a few acres and horses and dairy calves and all these things that were going to make it better. It didn't really make it better, so we decided to get pregnant and have a baby, and that would make it better. That didn't work out too well. I lost the baby at 6 months of the pregnancy, and it was a particularly bad and violent night between the two of us. He never hit me, so I didn't get that it was abuse. He would push me and wouldn't care if I fell on the wall or on the bed, and I have to give him this. He would push me, and I would pop right up off that bed right in his face. Motherfucker, you will not do that to me. Blonk, he'd do it again. I would come back as many times as I could till I just wore out. And the next morning after one of those, I got up and I was holding the ladder. He was on the second story with the attic, and I'm holding the ladder. And I'm thinking, you know, if I kick this ladder here, he'll land in those bushes, and that'll just piss him off. But if I kick it here, he will land on that brand new concrete driveway, and my problems will be over. And then I thought, oh my God, you're planning on killing him. I'm not a murderer. I may be a drunk, but I'm not a murderer. So I went to town the next day and got a lawyer and divorced him and saved his life. So I decided to do away with men. And I was about 5 years of rocking and rolling and being in business and running things. I run things real well. And running things and drinking a lot. I was a salesman for a multi-level building maintenance company and sold contracts for $10,000, $12,000 a month. And I could read those blueprints and I could do all this stuff, you know. And they loved me, and I could take all their customers out to dinner and drinks and drive them all home if they needed it. And then I managed to get home, drunk as a skunk, but I always managed to get home. I've never had a DWI. Wow. So if you got a few of those, you got some for me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So in 1976 or so, I was as bad a drunk as I ever was when I got here. And I was at yesterday once more. Marilyn and I had been to several places, and there was a man following us around. And she said, oh God, he's here again. What are you going to do? And I said, watch. A man came out of the bathroom. I grabbed him by the hand. I said, you know, you're darling, and I'd love to dance with you. And I married him 4 weeks later. Now, I'd never sobered up enough in that 4 weeks to notice that he didn't really drink. He was just a big coon-ass with a hairy chest, bald-headed. I love bald-headed men with a hairy chest and a nice belly. And, you know, my mom and my sister, one more time, standing at the Harmony Wedding Chapel on 45, were so thrilled to death. Now she'll be okay. And I was somewhat okay. You know, he thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't understand Al-Anon then. I do now. And he was as addicted to me as I was to alcohol. It's been a rough 2 months. So we got married. We went home. I quit drinking the way I drink, which is daily and a lot. Okay, and I would drink only when it was appropriate, and then I would drink a lot. And he was right there to take care of me because he'd have 2 or 3 drinks, and that was his limit. I could feel that I'm gonna have to stop now, and I'd look at him like he had snakes on his head. You know? Why would you stop now? You just felt it, you know. Thank you so much, sweetheart. So Jimmy and I got involved in everything. He went down to sign the kids up for Little League football. I hadn't been able to afford it the year before, but I wasn't spending $1,000 a week on boots, you know. It's amazing. And so he went down to sign them up, and they came back, and they were laughing and giggling. And they signed him up, the kids up, they signed him up to be the coach. We knew enough about football that we assigned the numbers by alphabetical order. Those of you who are football people know. So, and they signed me up to be the drill director. So I went in less than a month from getting off work, stopping by the bar, having a few drinks, maybe going home, have supper with the kids, go back to the bar. I went from that to going to the Little League field with 35 little girls from 5 to 13 years old and teaching them how to march. I did baton and all that in high school, how to march and twirl flags. It was crazy, but I enjoyed it. And we got on the board of the Sagemont Beverly Hills Little League for the next, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And there was one stipulation whenever they had board meetings. There was Pizza Hut and there was Pizza Inn in Sagemont Beverly Hills back then. And I don't remember which one it was, but the one that served beer was the only one I would show up for the board meetings at. And they understood that, and they planned accordingly. So I can see even back then, I had a little tendency to let alcohol run my life. You know, I needed it because I could drink on those nights because Jimmy was going to be driving anyway. We went in business for ourselves. We stayed in the glass business for the whole time we were married. I don't remember what year. He developed heart trouble. He was in and out of the hospital. We had 2 shops, one in Pasadena, one behind Alameda Mall. And in the same building where the shop was in Alameda Mall, we had a game room and a bar we bought. And I have a husband who's dying. And I can't move forward, and I can't move backward, and I own a damn bar next door to the glass company. What do you think happened? So eventually, Jimmy left and went to his mom's in Louisiana to escape me because I was drinking all the time and making him miserable because I was on him every minute to do what the doctors told him to do so he could stay alive for me. How dare you say you love me if you will not lose that 100 pounds, quit smoking, and blah, 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 all these things they wanted him to do in order to stay alive. And I thought if he wouldn't do those things, then he just wasn't loving me right. And he said, if I have to do all those things, I might as well be dead. He won the battle. He died in 1984, November the 22nd of 1984. He dropped dead of a massive coronary. He was 39. If he had had that coronary and ended up a vegetable who could hear what I was saying, I would have gotten to say, see, you were wrong. But he died, so he won. Hated that. 6 months later, I went to my first AA meeting. It wasn't because Jimmy died. It wasn't because I was worried about my drinking. It was because in the effort to help Mom pay the funeral expenses, and I usually laugh and say I need to pay my bar tabs, I was sitting in a car with 5 pounds of marijuana in the back floorboard and open paper grocery bags with a guy on the pager that I'd never met when the cops showed up instead, and he was 45 minutes late, and I was way too drunk to have enough sense to leave. So I went to jail for the one and only time in my life for one night. I got out at noon the next day. We took a cab to Jackie's Ice House by the Dome, and Jackie met us in the parking lot with a Lone Star Long Neck, my beer. And I thought, man, we're going to have to be more careful about this stuff. I went to court 1,000,000 times. I hate lawyers. Went to court 1,000,000 times, got off scot-free, 5 years felony deferred adjudication, probation, and a $500 fine. I've never had anything more than a traffic ticket. I will be fine. Ted Poe said, if you mess this up, Miss Gilbo, you will do 15 years flat, and I will see to it. Scared me so bad I went straight to a bar on Canal Street called Booties and set them up with tequila and drank till midnight and drove to Galveston for breakfast. But then I thought, you got to be careful now. I can't do this anymore. I took cabs. I had friends drive me. Sometimes I would call back and the same cab would come get me to take me back home to get my car, and he'd be trying to remind me, remember, you didn't want to drive your car. That's why you left. You don't really want me to just drive your cab. And shut up and leave me alone. And I did that for 6 weeks, and I finally almost got arrested on Old Galveston Road as I pulled out of a lovely little place called Jim's Honky Tonk. And the cops pulled out behind me, and I thought, this is it. You're going to prison for 15 years. Took a deep breath. That's it. Next thing I know, I'm sitting at a bar around the corner on 8th Street. And the cops are gone. And I don't know what happened to them. And they're handing me the beer that I've already paid for. And I don't know how I got there. I don't remember driving. I don't remember pulling. When one of my girls goes back out, we have to go through the scenario of how she got there. I don't remember driving down that road. I don't remember turning in. I don't remember putting the car in park, turning it off, getting the keys, opening the door. All those things I had to do to get there, and I don't remember any of them. But man, when y'all talked about blackouts, oh, I understood what you were talking about, and I never would have believed I'd had blackouts. But I had blackouts all along those last 3 years that I was drinking so much. I'd have a day or two that I wasn't sure where I'd been, whether I was a photographer for Auto Trader, and I wouldn't be sure if I'd gone and taken the pictures, and there they'd be in the camera, and I don't remember going, but I did. They kept beer in the fridge at some of my car lots so they'd make sure I was all right, and their pictures weren't messed up. There was a selfish angle to that. So I go to my first meeting. My girlfriend, Susie's mama, dragged her out of my beer joint 3 years earlier and took her to this place in Pasadena called the Legacy Club. And quite often I don't remember my children's names, and there's only 2 of them, but I remembered the name of that place 3 years later, and I looked it up in the phone book. There was such a thing. And I found it, and I called, and I asked them about meetings, and she said the meeting's at noon. She said, do you think you have a... Not gonna get me. I hung that phone up quick. I was so afraid y'all were gonna trap me against my will in this cult or whatever it was. So I went over there and I went in, read everything on the wall. You can always tell the newcomer dance because they're so interested in the walls. And then I eased over to the table, and this woman looked up and said, you know, what's your name? I said, it's Lin. She said, I'm Peaches. Sit down right here. We'll be with you in a minute. Okay, fine. Then she turned to her friend, and they started talking about God. I'm a well-brought-up Southern Baptist girl who married a Baptist preacher. No, Baptist Sunday school teacher. And that was going to straighten me out, and did, and then God killed him. And then I finally bounced around and got my favorite husband of all time, another Cajun from Abbeville, and he died. And you want to talk in front of me about God? I don't want to talk or hear about it. I was so mad. If I'd had any place to go, I'd have gone. This is my profanity thing, okay? Peaches became my sponsor. After about 90 days, I got around to asking her. But long before that, she chaired that meeting that day. And she used the words God and motherfucker in the same sentence, and she saved my life. Because I could listen to her. If she talked about God, I didn't care. She knew how to talk my language, you know. And I needed that desperately. What else do I want to tell you? I have no idea. Okay, God, come on. Drop it on me. Okay, when I was 4 months sober, my precious daughter packed her bags and left. She didn't like all this sobriety in the house, you know. I mean, they had a good deal going. They were 15 and 17. I'd tell them what I wanted them to do. I'd tell them what I wanted them not to do. They'd do whatever the hell they wanted to, and I'd come in and yell 5 or 10 minutes, and I'd pass out on the couch. No problem. I'd throw them the purse and the keys and say, go get us a pizza, but get me some popcorn, a Three Musketeer, and a Coke. Okay, and I'd lay on the couch, and they'd come back and they'd eat pizza, and I'd lay there and I'd eat my popcorn and my Three Musketeers, and my precious and beloved son would sit right beside me to keep me company until I passed out, and then he would steal my Three Musketeers and my popcorn, and I never saw it again. But it worked out real well until I got sober, and then I remembered what I asked them or told them not to do. And I would come in and they hadn't done it. I'd yell at them, and I'd jump in the car because I wasn't supposed to be yelling at them. Damn. And then I'd run over to the Legacy Club, and if I didn't get relief there, I'd run down to the 24-hour club and stay all night. I was absolutely insane when I got sober. I wasn't crazy before I got sober. At one point I told Peaches I might not be alcoholic. I might just be crazy, and the booze was covering it up, so this isn't going to do any good, so I might as well drink. You know, I always came up with these reasons why I might as well drink, and there weren't cell phones, so I'm on a payphone telling her this crap. And today I know exactly how she felt listening to my dribble on the payphone. and she would say something like, have you had a drink yet? No. Okay, well, let's try not having a drink until tomorrow morning, and then make a final decision and see if it's necessary. It never was necessary. And then she would sentence me to the Way Out Women's Center. I had to go to the Women's Center, take a pack of cigarettes and a pack of panties, or both, because girls never show up with cigarettes or panties, and go to the Women's Center and find the newest one and ask her what's going on and sit there with her and make eye contact and listen to what she had to say. Oh my God. My favorite one was not going to be able to stay the 10 days because she was working in a strip joint, and she left her ID and her checkbook and her favorite pasties in the locker. and somebody was going to steal them and write hot checks all over town, and she was going to go to jail anyway, and it wasn't going to help her to get sober. She actually did stay, made about 2 years sober that I know of. But I did what I was told. I did what I was told. Intensive work with another alcoholic. And I got to stay sober. I wasn't real good about working steps. I didn't really want to do all that work. I mean, Peaches was a fantastic person, and she'd already done all that work. Did I really need to duplicate that effort? Could you just not wrap that in a nice, pretty package and put a bow on it for me? And she'd say, no, when you're ready, when you're ready. What I want you to focus on for this first 100 days, and then extend it a little further, what I want you to focus on is how to live sober and build an AA life. I can do that. I like the fellowship. I didn't like God. I didn't like some of y'all talked about God too damn much. But I liked not having the effects of a fifth of booze in my gut every day. My life got so much better just by not drinking. And I was really happy to settle for that. I really was. Until it stopped working. And then I'm crazy and I don't know what to do. I hear what everybody says to do, but I don't want to do what they said to do. So finally I went to Peaches and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm going to die or kill myself or something. And she said, are you ready? And I said, yes. What do I do? She said, I want you to get up in the morning and I want you to get on your knees. On my knees? What kind of God needs me on my knees? She says, you need you on your knees so you might remember during the day who was asking for help this morning. Shit. She always had a reasonable explanation. Get on your knees, ask God to guide you, and then get up and shut up, because if you stay down there, you will begin to tell him where exactly you want to be guided. I still have to watch that. And that's what you're to do, and then you're to go about your day and watch for God. And we went through the first and second step. Was I willing to believe that there was a God? I believed it only because you said that it was true. And I saw your life, and it was way better than mine was. And you said that this God that you did not understand was doing it for you because you asked him. So I came to that place in step 3 where it asks us to make a decision to turn our will and our life over to God. It doesn't ask me to turn my will and my life over to God because I don't know how the hell to do that. It asks me to make a decision. So what I call that is trying on God on for size. Try it out. Try believing that there's actually God and acting on that belief and asking him and then getting up and going about your business and watching. Amazing shit happens. Watching for God, and he shows up. And after a while, it is impossible not to believe in the God of my experience. I still don't have a God of my understanding because I still don't know why that sucker does stuff the way he does. Come on now. Really? I'm supposed to go on a cruise and have a wonderful time and come back sick and have 2 months of cardiac tests going on anyway. They found a nodule on my lung, so they sent me to a pulmonologist who had to have a CAT scan. I don't think he's ever gotten the results of that, but he sent me for a PET scan from skull to blah, blah. He did a blood test that said I don't have cancer, but he's still doing the PET scan. I have been to more doctors and more tubes in the last 2 months than the law allows, and I finally got the results from the cardiologist who's been in my life for a number of years. Trust me, I'm a miracle standing here. And he said, for your body, this is an excellent report. I couldn't ask for better. Okay, good. So now you're going to give me cancer? God, that's a chicken shit way to do. So we're waiting to talk to the other doctor. But I haven't heard anything bad from him. Anyway, where was I? I get sidetracked real easily. So I got through steps 3. I got on to 4 with Peaches. I never completed 4 and 5 with Peaches. I got busy. Any of you can relate to that? I got busy. There were other things going on. I wasn't drinking. My life was better. It was Christmas, and I was by myself. My daughter was gone. My son had joined my daughter. Turncoat. And I'm living in my mom and dad's old house in Park Place, right around the corner from the Women's Center. And there he was. Fine, upstanding young man, 15 years older than I was. Lyondale Petrochemical, been with them 35 years, had about 7, 8 months sober. He was standing talking to my sponsor the day I met him. He asked me on a date. We went out December the 22nd. Anyway, went out in December, got married in January. And I thought, look, lightning's striking again. It's going to be wonderful. He wasn't an Al-Anon. He did not think I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. There's nothing more, men, listen to me carefully. There's nothing more attractive about you than you being madly in love with us. Convince us of that, we will do anything you want. Anyway, so he didn't convince me of that. We started fighting about the second week, and it went crazy. And he was not a real hands-on abuser. He was more of a verbal abuser, but he'd get hands-on if the verbal didn't work. And we finally ended up 11 months into the marriage, still living in my mom and dad's home, paying $300 a month rent, including utilities, and I'm a gold digger. And I am in the living room in the sweet grasp of his hands around my neck, and he is choking me to death. And he finally dropped me. Thank God. And he went over to his rocker and started rocking. And I eased over to the couch and slid up on the couch. Waited a minute, said, "Can I go now?" Yeah. And I got my purse and I ran out the front door. And just as I got out the door, he started behind me, and I jumped in my car and ran to the Way Out Women's Center. And they got me in the Houston Area Women's Center, battered women's shelter. It was the best thing I ever did in my life. Because, see, it's hard for you to convince me that this ain't working and I'm not going to be able to make it work. Because he was going to retire in 2 years, and we were going to get a big motor home. We were going to go do AA conferences all over the place and make jewelry and sell it. And we just had this wonderful life, and it was going to be wonderful. And he wanted it to be wonderful. But I drove him crazy. He won the little young prize. And it wasn't so much of a prize, So, anyway, I didn't go back after that. I won't go into that too deeply. But I didn't go back after that. We got a divorce, and they went with me to court, the advocate, and guarded me from him. And I stayed in this battered women's shelter for 42 days, and then I got a job at the Sky Lane Apartments. Sky Lane Apartments was 10 weekly furnished apartments in Houston, Texas. And at the time I went to work for them, 8 of them were run by women in the program. Because Darby Suter, the owner, said, if there's an excuse known to man, you gals have already used it. And we did he wanted to have a little inexpensive furnished apartment where guys coming in from out of town to do construction work for 3 or 4 months could stay in a safe place and go to work. And what he got was that, and a lot of hookers and drug dealers and that kind of thing. And we could spot them, and we weren't scared of them. I'll see you in a meeting next week. And, it went well. And I was going to stay there. I intended to stay in AA about 6 months once I got sober a little bit and figured it out. And it's been 39 years. And I intended to stay at Skylane for about 6 months. And I was there 4 years. I came into some money at the end of that 4 years. And I gave my notice and did it right. And I had a fellow at the time, and we were building a house up near Livingston on Taylor Lake Estates, where my mom and dad had retired in 75. My mom was living up there, my dad was dead. And we were building this house, and I went back to school. One of my babies was a certified occupational therapy assistant, and I loved listening to her talk about her job. She traveled for a big rehab company, and she'd go somewhere and be there 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and then come home. They'd fly her in and out on Friday night and back out on Monday. And man, I loved it. I was going to do that. Never did. I did go to school. I did finish the school. I've been to college 5 times. This is the first thing I've ever finished. I finished top in my class. Oh my God. When you're old like I was at 46, you study way more because you're absolutely dead sure you're not going to remember any of that crap. And then it's a cakewalk when you get in there because you've studied yourself to death. And we had a little row that we called the Geron row. We were all in our 40s or more. And the other students called us the Geron row until after that first 6 weeks exam. And then they called us to see if they could join our group. And we loved that. So anyway, that went well. I got out of school. I went to work in a nursing home, thought I'd died and gone to hell. How in the world can I protect these little old people? Oh my God, from these CNAs who have 5 jobs and 25 patients and worked to death, and we still expect them to smile and say, oh, it's okay that you threw a handful of shit at me. I love you. Yeah, I love you. Anyway, so I was with that company for about 2.5, 3 years, and then I went to work for the company that I was to work for the next 26 years. Now, you remember I was married 16 years to 4 total different husbands, but I was able to keep a job in Alcoholics Anonymous for 26 years and get up and go to work every day on time. Of course, I did home health pediatrics, and I got to set my own schedule, so yeah. We got to give it that. I did have a little leeway. So I did that, and it was the very, very, very best job for an old, drunk mother who didn't do too well at mothering. The best job on the planet for giving me a sense of making amends through my job. I loved what I did. Yes. I'm still licensed. I'm still trying to decide whether to renew it in March. That means I'll be 78 in March, and I'd be 80 when this license runs out. Haven't seen a patient since I broke my arm in 2019, then had surgery, then developed AFib, then 8 visits to the hospital, 5 heart procedures during COVID. That was a mess. And, you know, I haven't seen a patient since then, but I might want to. And if you give up the license, you know, what are you going to do? What if all hell breaks loose and all our money goes away? How will I survive? Well, I better keep that license. So I'm still looking at it. I can do CEUs online. Anyway. I went to work in OT in 1992, I think. In 1995, I bought the house that I'm in now. It is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home on a corner with 3 little apartments in Woodland Heights. The bus drops in the yard, and what I wanted was a boarding house for sober women. And it was perfect because the front 2 bedrooms had an outside entrance, and they could come and go. I had 2 girls in each room, and for the next 25 years, I had hundreds of women. And I got up on time and got the hell out of there every morning early so I could get away from those crazy bitches. Jesus, you know. And my being in the other room, it's my home. I'm in the other room. I'm just past the kitchen from all there. They might get a little snarly with each other quietly, but they don't yell at each other because Lynn will come out. Thank you, God, for that intimidating nature you built in me. 7th step says, please remove from me every single defective character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and others. He still has a use for some of my character defects because they pop up at exactly the appropriate time to straighten something out. I don't do it as often. I don't have to do it as often anymore because I no longer have commitments to take care of things. In 1999, I got a chance to buy a building on White Oak in Columbia. It had a nice little office building with an open room and bathrooms and kind of a kitchen area, a big parking lot, and a house next door. And the White Oak group was born. And we met there from 2000 until 2013. In 2013, I had neck surgery and shoulder surgery at the same 6 weeks from each other. I was off for 8 months total. Didn't think I would ever be able to work again, and I really couldn't handle the liability, legal liability of owning that building. We had a 10 o'clock meeting at night, mostly young people. We had meetings during the day. At one point, we had a 2 o'clock meeting. They get a little gnarly, those young people, sober. Can you imagine? Getting fist fights on my porch, you know? So I went to the group conference with this big neck collar on and said, I'm so sorry, but I'm having to put the building up for sale. And they were wonderful. They acted like Grandma had come and kicked them to the curb. Oh my God, how can you blah, 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 blah. So we talked, and they finally agreed. How soon do we have to be gone? I'm thinking 4 or 5 months to find a buyer. Okay. Called me 2 weeks later, said, when can we move if we want to? I'm like, oh my God, there goes the mortgage. I did have the house next door rented, but the girls were moving out the 1st of July. I had a realtor I couldn't deal with, probably me. So I went down to C&D Hardware and bought a for sale by owner sign and put it for sale at $150,000 more than he told me to ask for it. And I put the sign out front, and I was sitting there talking to a girl, and we were making arrangements to do her 4-step that day. And this lady came up, and she was writing down the information. I rolled the window down, and I said, honey, I own the building. Are you interested? And we went in, and we wrote our contract on a paper towel, and we both signed it. And we closed on the 1st of July. And we had our last meeting there the last day before the 1st of July, and it was a 10 o'clock meeting, and then we had the birthday meeting at Impact Church where we're moving to. That group is still going. We went from Impact Church for about 4 years, we went to Heights Group for about 4 years, and then we went to Post Oak Club. My character defects. I don't like rich people. I don't like entitled motherfuckers who think they're better than everybody else. Have you ever been to Post Oak? When Shaq saw me at the meeting at Post Oak, and he saw the powers that be, and we were talking, and we were going in a room, he said, oh my God, hell has frozen over. It froze over. We moved. We have just the simple one meeting at 9:30 every night, 7 nights a week. We come into, just like we did at Heights, we walk in there, we have our own stuff, we have our own chips, we have our own everything, and we do our own chairman, we put on the meeting, and they take the money, and everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. And it's a late meeting, so we have a lot of newcomers. It's a candlelight meeting, and we learned that when we were in my building. The candlelight, I'll hurry. I used to go by all of my properties every morning before I went to work, just to see if anything burned down overnight. And I would stop last at White Oak, and I would go in, and I would nuke me some of the leftover coffee, which they left out, and I would pick up the Coke cans that they left on the floor with Coke dribbling all over the floor, and I would cuss a little bit and carry on a little bit, and the candle wax, because we had real candles, and they would build things like motorcycles out of candle wax, and it'd be all over the floor and all over the table, and I would be cussing those little brats and blah, 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 blah. And then they'd come to birthday, and they'd talk about finally being in AA since they were 15, and finally 5, 6 years later, going to White Oak, to this old ratty building, and being able to talk with the lights down and nobody staring them in the face, where they could finally talk about the things they needed to get out. And I didn't give one damn about a Coke can on the floor. You can throw them all over the walls. I never told them that because they would have. But, it was just a miraculous place, and it still is. We celebrated our 25th anniversary on the 26th of January. I am honored to have been a part of it. When we moved to Post Oak, it was like a month or so before they shut it down for COVID, and it was terrible. And I am not technologically savvy, okay, but I went home that day, and I managed to do a Zoom meeting, and I went to a meeting in Ireland at 2 in the afternoon in Ireland. And it was wonderful. And that night we had a White Oak Zoom meeting, and after a month or two, then Post Oak got theirs going, and we meet in Zoom room 2 of the postoakclub.com every night at 9:30. And when we were getting the club opened back up, they were only going to open it for their meetings during the day. And Charlie and I went down there, Charlie G and I went down there, and he volunteered that we would come down there every day and open it up at 6 so they could have their 6:30 and 8 o'clock meeting if they would let us keep it open until 11 to have our 9:30 meeting. And they agreed to that, and I went every day. I said, if I'm going to die of COVID, I want to die getting it from somebody I love, not from some stranger at Kroger or Walmart. So at that time, about 3 or 4 weeks into it, the children came to me and they said, we need you to go home. You're not safe down here. So they took over. And I let them take over. And I want you to know, it ain't easy for me to let anybody take over anything and take my hands off of it. If I'm not able or willing to take the commitment to run someplace, I don't get to tell those who are willing and able how to do their job. They've made changes at White Oak. Sometimes I'll go over for a birthday meeting on Saturday night. It's there at Saturday. And a couple of them meet me at the door and say, Lynn, we've made a couple of changes now. You going to be all right? Yeah, I'm going to be all right. And they know I'm all right. That means I'm glued to that chair with my mouth shut, like Beaches said. And you know, guess what? It's still going. It's still going. That was 2019. This is 5 years later, 6 years later, and it is a viable club. The Zoom meeting, we still have the Zoom meeting. I do that every night because it's safer for me. And we have 25 to 30 people a night in that Zoom meeting. And the face-to-face meeting is 20 to 30. And on good nights, there's 40, 50 people in there. There's all kinds of stories trying to get in, and I don't have time for them. So we're not going to talk about when it was a smoking club. Okay. What else do we want to tell you? Well, I told you about the heart thing. I had a triple bypass in 2008, went back to work in 6 weeks, been fine ever since. Then, darn it, I fell and broke my arm, had surgery, developed AFib, got through all of that. And then last January, I ended up in the hospital with my electrolytes were totally out of balance, and I did not know I had diabetes. And I was very critical for a week or two. And I don't have time for the rest of that story. So let's just say I came to a firm understanding that I needed to make some changes in my financial life. And I was able to ask my baby of 35 years over here and her husband, who I introduced to each other, to become my power of attorney in finances and medical. I watched them take care of her mother and her grandmother. And in January of 24, while I was trying to die, this one was trying to die in Cancun. And Gary damn near pulled her through that single-handedly. And I know that they are capable of paying my bills if something happens and I can't. Paying my bills because the money's in the bank. I've at least hung on to that much. Paying my bills and taking care of me being in the bed in my house in the Heights with my little TV, and God help us, if I still have enough sense, it will never be Lawrence Welk on there, because we used to laugh about Grandma. Grandma, all she wanted to do, she didn't want to get out of bed. She was 90-something years old. I just want to lay in my bed and click, let me watch Lawrence Welk reruns. And to me, it's like, oh, hell, please don't let that happen to me, God. But I will do that if that's what it takes to stay in my house. Over the last, since October, November, I went to Dudley's birthday at the Heights Recovery Center, and I met a woman named Alice who desperately needed a room. And my room was empty. So she rents the front bedroom on the left from me. And then November the 1st, my darling, precious son, who is in ill health, and I love you, and he won't eat right, and he's diabetic, he moved in the front. So Alice is over there with 25 years sober and her big dog and cat and a separate entrance. And Carl's over here with his Chiweenie and 21 years sober. And on the other side of the kitchen at the back of the house is me with my dog and my bedroom and study and bathroom and exit. And some weeks we don't even see each other unless somebody makes noise in the kitchen. You know, we can be as alone as we want to be in this sober house. And there's 3 apartments, and 2 of them are at this moment rented by women in the program, and 1 is rented by this precious, slightly autistic lady, which was kind of my specialty in home health pediatrics. So I love the life that God unfolded for me. I promise you, if you'd have told me, instead of finding the very perfect husband number 5 or 6 or 7, that I was going to spend the rest of my life taking care of a bunch of snot-nosed, miserable, bitchy women arguing over whose egg that is in my kitchen, I would have run from the doors and headed for the bar in self-defense. I wouldn't do that. But it unfolds one day at a time, and you just do the next thing that comes up. And I got into real estate, and I got into the stock market. I cleared $1 million in profit off of the houses that I bought in the Heights. Most of them were a house with apartments, 4-plex with a 2-plex on Heights Boulevard, over the next 95 to 2000. But in the stock market, do any of us have gambling problems? It's just the same thing as a slot machine when you're buying 0.0004 cent stocks. And I have lost tons of money. And I spent tons of money in AA. And God and I kind of agreed, or I said it, I don't think he ever said, yeah, honey, it's okay. But I've spent as much on AA as I've blown in the stock market. And I still ended up with this house and these 3 little apartments and my precious son and my Alice and a life that works financially and will pay for caregivers if I stroke out and don't die. So we're going to try to keep me alive for as long as we can. I was a DNR. Strict. 30 days, you got to turn it off. Not anymore. If I die, he doesn't have a place to live. Alice really doesn't want that to happen. And my little friend in the back says, oh my God, I won't have an apartment either. Yeah, because the house is reverse mortgaged. I do things financially that make sense in my life. Okay. I probably told y'all way more than you need to know, and I don't really care. I don't know which little bit of information is going to hit somebody who needs to hear that exact bit of information. I cannot tell you. I will tell you one last thing. Today I got a message from my friend Richard, who lived in my front bedroom for about 2 or 3 years while he was going through back surgery and trying to get sober. He was my driver when I had my shoulder surgery. He was my driver that got me to PT assignments. He had 7 days sober when he started coming off crack cocaine. His sponsor said, you're safe with him, Lynn. Oh, okay. Jesus. But he messaged me today, and he's coming into town and wants to get together for lunch tomorrow. Yesterday, I got a message from another friend that I don't think I've seen in 10 years. He's up in Conroe now. And he tried to friend me on Facebook, and I didn't accept it because he just used his initials, and I didn't know who it was. And I've made some bad mistakes of friending people on Facebook. There's crazy people on the internet. You know, I always think, well, they can't find me. Well, I don't know if they can or not. I do have a gun, but I don't really want to do the paperwork. So anyway, this other friend messaged finally, and I saw the message. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks, and he just said, you know, Lynn Chamberlain, you said something to me outside a meeting when you asked if you could talk to me at least 10 years ago. And since I came back to AA, and I don't know when that was, it has saved my life over and over again. and I don't have a clue what I said. I go to conferences and conventions and things and stuff in AA locally, and somebody will walk up to me and she'll say, I know, they all start it this way, I know you're not going to remember who I am. I don't remember who you are, but you threw me out of your house in 1997. I said, did you drink before? No. But you were right. I wasn't doing anything but looking for Mr. Right to take care of me. And you threw me out, and I ended up getting drunk, which I was heading to anyway. And now I've been sober since 1998. You made me responsible for my choices. And I just want to cry. And that happens to me over and over. And it is the most wonderful feeling to know that my life has meant something. And what it's meant is there's a lot of small people doing small things. And I step up when I am placed there in front of them to help them get through that little path. And it makes a difference to that one person. Peaches used to say I was a groomer. You stand on the edge of the path and you just kind of soften their ruffled feathers as they come by. And that's it. And I'm not supposed to keep you as pets for the rest of my life unless you're Becky. But, you know, it has given me, again, a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I'm so grateful to still be here at almost 78 next month and still be alive and kicking. Thank you very much for listening.